Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello, yeah, I can hear you. This is Dr.
Yes, sir.
Selvam.
Good morning, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay, sir. Okay. Srija?
No, and the speaker also has arrived, and she's been made a co-host, and everything
Okay,
is
sir.
set. Maybe you can start the program exactly at 10 a.m.
10 o'clock. Okay, sir.
I would like to thank everyone who helped us to run the Noel Swan program very successfully. Sunshine is a welcome thing. It brings a lot of brightness. On this special day, I would like to invite Ms. M. Bonupritika Ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to welcome the gathering.
Thank you, Swati. Every new day is another chance to change your life. With this positive note, I, Ms. Bhanupritika M., Assistant Professor, Department of English, Sri Saraswati Agaraja College, Pollachi, takes immense pride in welcoming you all to this National Online Expert Series 2 on Plato to Postmodernism and beyond. I feel honored to be here today to welcome you all to this event. First and foremost, I would like to welcome our esteemed principal, Dr. A. Somu sir, and our management members to this lecture series. Secondly, I would like to welcome Dr. V. Selvin sir, Head Department of English and Vice Principal, Sri Saraswati Agaraja College, who stood as a constant support, guiding us in all our endeavors. I would like to warmly welcome our chief guest of the day, Dr. Padma V. McKettridge, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Stella Maris College, Chennai. I feel honored to have you here with us today, ma'am. I'm extremely pleased to welcome our faculty members of Department of English, Sri Saraswati Agaraja College, Pollachi, and student friends for this lecture series. I would like to welcome all our participants for turning out in such great numbers. Your esteemed presence and enthusiastic participation would always help us to plan out for more sessions ahead. Once again, I welcome you all to the lecture series and thank you for the opportunity given.
Thank you, ma'am. All our dreams can come true if we have the real courage to pursue them. I would like to invite Ms. D. Srija, ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to introduce the speaker.
Srija? Srija, can you hear me? Srija?
Ma'am, we can hear you. I'm Banu this side. There is some network issue, I think. I keep calling her. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, okay.
No, that's all right. This is Dr. Selvin. And I would extend my warm welcome to the speaker and my friend, Dr. Batma V. Mekatich, and good morning, ma'am. I would like to introduce the speaker for the benefit of the audience. Dr. Batma Mekatich is currently Assistant Professor in the Department of English, Stella Maris College, Chennai, India. Her PhD, received from the University of Madras, was on Indian fiction in English and the Bhashas in the 1980s and was published by Orient Black Swan as Fiction as Window. Her articles on areas such as Indian literatures, literature and science, and Bhakti studies have appeared in a number of national and international journals. She has also translated S. Ramakrishnan's Tamil play Aravan into English and co-edited a collection of translations titled Four Tamil Plays and an anthology of essays on interfaith dialogue titled My Faith and Others. In 2018, she underwent training in peace building and conflict transformation from the Mindano Peace Building Institute as a fellow of the United Board for Christian Higher Education in Asia. Her teaching and research interests include Indian literatures, critical theory, Bhakti studies, film studies, and science and literature. I welcome you for this second lecture for lecture series, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Winners make a habit of manufacturing their own positive expectations in advance of the event. I take this opportunity to invite Dr. Padma V. Mekatich, ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Stella Maris College, Autonomous, Chennai, to present a lecture on Dials for Murder, adapting Hitchcock in Tamil cinema.
Good morning. Good morning. Am I audible? I hope I'm audible.
You are audible, ma'am.
Yeah. Is the screen visible? I'm not able to make out.
Yeah, I can. The screen is visible, ma'am. Maybe you can make it.
Yeah, I haven't started the slideshow. Just
okay, ma'am. Thank you,
ma'am. It's loading. Yeah. Is it visible now?
It's very much visible, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me here. Very special thanks to Dr. Selvin for remembering me when he thought of this lecture, when the lecture series was decided, and also for letting me talk on something as far away from literary studies as it may appear at first glance, as Tamil cinema and Hitchcock. But as the talk progresses, I hope some connections will become clear. When I asked Dr. Selvin how much of time I had, he said 1 hour. And my first reaction was, my God, that's just about a few minutes less than an average Hollywood film. But nevertheless, once I started to actually prepare the talk per se, I realized I will need this time. So, Dial Sa for Murder, the title is a combination of Dial M for Murder, which is one of Hitchcock's very popular films, and its Tamil remake Savi, which starred Satyaraj. Savi actually used a Hindi film Etbar as its intermediary, but I will not be talking too much about Etbar. Rather, we will look at how the English, the Hindi, and the Tamil have a lot of kind of web-like connections with each other. The other film I thought of looking at is Muran, the film that was a far more recent film than Savi, remade from, not remade, based very heavily on another iconic film by Hitchcock, Strangers on a Train. And interestingly, for all of us, as I'm guessing most of us are students of literature or teachers of literature, both Dial M for Murder and Strangers on a Train are actually based on novels and plays. Dial M for Murder is based on a play by Frederick Knott, who also wrote the screenplay for Hitchcock's film. Strangers on a Train is based on a novel, a mystery novel by Patricia Highsmith. And Patricia Highsmith is known as a writer of mystery novels. So to start off, I thought of looking very quickly at why cinema studies and literary studies. Of course, for many of us, there is a very close connection between cinema and literature, in the sense that at a very basic level, many literary texts that we study in our classrooms and those that we prefer not to study also have been the sources for a number of popular films, critically acclaimed films, and middle cinema. So there is a close relationship between literature and cinema. But even academically, when we study literature or study cinema, we do have a number of approaches that echo across both the fields. One that we will be going into in some detail today is genre studies. In literature, of course, this is something that we go back to structuralism and kind of critique it in post-structuralism. In cinema studies, particularly in cinema studies that focus on Hollywood, genre studies is very important and significant. In fact, Rutledge has an entire series of critical books, genre in Hollywood, and I will be drawing somewhat from its from the one book in that series on thrillers. In Indian cinema, on the other hand, perhaps genre studies has not been so important, maybe because in genre itself is not all that important in Indian cinema. Indian cinema very notoriously breaks generic boundaries. We like our films to cross all emotions, just like life does, I guess. The other few approaches that we can look at that cut across perhaps cinema across the world is gender and sexuality. I'm not going too much into that, but of course we do have a number of studies using those. Tamil cinema, and particularly very recent Tamil cinema, has engaged itself very overtly with caste, and caste studies therefore have become very important in the study of Tamil cinema recently. And class and Marxism associated with it have, of course, been something that film studies across the world have been looking at. And as I say these things, I am aware that I am placing Indian cinema on the one hand and Hollywood cinema on the other hand. Although in the course of the talk, I hope that we will consider both of them more as having myriad engagements with each other. I am drawing specifically on Hollywood cinema, fully aware that it is only one of the many kinds of world cinema out there. But I think to a large extent, it still remains the most watched non-Indian form of cinema in India. I think recently Korean cinema has come a very close second. I also would like to bring out at this time that cinema studies focusing on Tamil cinema have pointed out how cinema studies in India tend to look at Hindi cinema as national cinema, in the sense that whenever there is a study examining some aspect of Indian cinema, the focus is largely on Hindi cinema, whereas Tamil cinema and cinema in other languages is often seen as the binary opposite of Hindi cinema. This again is somewhat misleading, because if we look at Tamil cinema and Hindi cinema, we do have a number of engagements between the two. So one, of course, is Tamil cinema, which has drawn upon Hindi cinema. So these are some of the examples that I have here on the screen. And I would like to point out at this stage that the examples that I will draw upon are completely and absolutely random. I'm sure each one of us in the audience can identify or remember at least 50 more examples for everything that I'm saying. So please bear with me and do keep those ideas in mind, and maybe see how much what we are discussing here does work with those. These are, again, like you can make out across genres, across time. Work on Thi, which was made into Yarni, Amar Akbar Anthony, which was made into Shankar Salim Simon, Mukaddar Ka Sikandar into Amarakavyam. But equally importantly, and I think more in number, you will actually find that there are a number of Tamil films which were made into Hindi. Again, there are a few random names over here. Malai Kallan, which was made into Azad, was actually made into a number of Indian languages and ran very successfully in all the languages. There was Enga Veettu Pillai, which was made into Ramashyam, and Missy Amma into Miss Mary. The three of these films, and I'm sure, again, you can find a lot more examples. The same director directed the Tamil and the Hindi, except for the hero in between Miss Mary and Missy Amma, Gemini Ganesh, all the others had, of course, completely different actors. But very interestingly, they all came out within a year or two of each other. Unlike this in the previous slide, when you had the remake from the other direction, there was almost 15 or 20 years difference between the two films. A more recent example, of course, is Virasat, which was remade from Devar Magan. Apart from these, of course, there has always in cinema the trend of films being released simultaneously in Hindi and in Tamil. It goes as far back as 1948, when Gemini Studios released Chandralekha. It was a film which was a high budget film, one of the highest budget films for that time, and I am given to understand that even the posters were very different from the kind of posters that were used at that time. And of course, we have Mani Ratnam's Bombay, we have Kamal Hassan's Vishwarupam, and we also have the more recent Jawan. Like I said, again, I'm sure we have a lot more examples. So what I hope we can look at is the various different kinds of, myriad kinds of engagements between Hindi and Tamil cinema. And also look at this field, which within cinema studies has of late become very, very vibrant, adaptation studies. So when we look at Indian cinema particularly, most critics have pointed out that Indian cinema has always adapted from earlier sources. So the first Indian cinema, like we all know, Indian film was Raja Harishchandra, which was directed by Dada Saheb Phalke. It was a story that was drawn from Hindu mythology. The first Tamil film, Kichakavadam, silent film, was obviously drawn from the Mahabharata. Kalidas, which was the first talkie that was produced in the South, was a bilingual film with songs and dialogue in Tamil and in Telugu, and again drew upon a number of sources without being exactly, faithful to any one source. It was what we would call today a biopic. Now, this is interesting largely also because this also harks back to what Graham Shaw, a critic, a scholar on book studies, discusses about South Asian book culture. And when he's discussing print medium, he points out that South Asia is unique in that there has always been a simultaneity of mediums. So when the print medium came, he points out, we did not have the earlier forms like the oral narrative forms or the performative narrative forms or even the manuscript forms being overridden by the print medium. So the print became just one more medium in which the same narrative was used in a very different way, given the specificities of the medium, of course, which also means two things for us. One is that in many South Asian cultures, originality does not lie so much in the content as in the treatment of the content. So very often we watch a film or read a book and we already know the story. But what is important is how that particular film or that particular novel or that particular play presents the story or deals with the theme, which also means, and this is the second point, the question of copyright becomes very, very dicey over here. What exactly is the source? Which is the source? Because if most texts revisit earlier texts, then how far back are we going? Again, world over, there have been a number of sources that cinema has drawn upon. We just noticed mythology. Again, these are completely random examples. We have film, we have novels, and with the advancement in technology, it's become possible now to use different kinds of technology to direct film. So we have computer graphic animation used for a Tintin comic that was made into a film. And we also have other kinds of other resources, other sources. I've given the example of Rashomon over there, which was an Akira Kurosawa Japanese film, which was very iconic film, also something that is somewhat related to what we will be discussing in a few minutes. Now, given this, what exactly does, I'm sorry, there's a small other thing that I also wanted to mention. There have been instances of, in India as well, films, earlier films being remade either with the same name or otherwise. This is something that again happens across the world. Hitchcock himself, 1933, he made The Man Who Knew Too Much, and in 1955, I think he remade it all over again. I mean, he remade it, not all over again. He remade it with the same name, but with different actors. In India, Mehboob Khan in the 1940s had made an iconic film, Aurat. And in 1957, if I'm not mistaken, he remade it with a few changes. And this was the equally iconic Mother India. In Tamil, of course, we have Billa, which was originally our Rajni starrer, which itself drew heavily upon the Amitabh Bachchan starrer Dawn. The Amitabh Bachchan starrer was remade as Dawn again with Shah Rukh in the lead. And a couple of years after that, Billa was released with Ajit. So we can see how the connections are very intricate. It's not very possible right now here in even in this one series set of Dawns to figure out exactly where the source lies. So which brings us to what exactly does adaptation studies look at? So one of the cornerstone, one of the earliest methods of approach in adaptation studies was fidelity studies. The question in fidelity studies is, of course, how faithful is the adaptation to the original? And I think this is something many of us either say or have heard. If a book has been made into a film, I think many of us say it's not as good as the book. The movie is not as good as the book. The book is far better. A movie can never capture the essence of the book, which is certain parameters, yes, perfectly valid. But at the same time, it does not take into account the fact that cinema is a completely different medium altogether, and therefore has to use things that are specific to that medium. So, for example, the J.R.R. Tolkien may have spent about 2 chapters describing Middle-earth for us and describing the route that Frodo takes to take the ring to the cracks of doom. But the director of the film can do it with a long shot that lasts just for a few minutes or even a few seconds. But today, fidelity studies again in India is again something that we question. Because given that we are already working with a simultaneity of mediums, and given that we are working in a culture that has always encouraged translations and adaptations, fidelity studies per se may not work. Nevertheless, it is something that we could still use. And I will be using some aspects of it in the sense that one of the things that fidelity studies does is that it will identify similarities and differences between the source, original, and the adaptation. But this again there are certain implications that we cannot ignore. One is that whatever came earlier chronologically is often considered the original, and chronologically whatever came later is considered the copy or the adaptation. Now, this again in cinema and literature may not work so easily. For example, if you take a film, an iconic film in Hindi cinema like Mughal-e-Azam, which was based on the story of Salim and Anarkali, which was also dubbed into Tamil. I think it was dubbed as Salim. I'm not sure though, but I do know it was dubbed. But the film was iconic. It was an iconic film. It was released in 1960. But the film was actually about, it was 20 years, almost 15 years in the making. And somewhere in the early 50s, almost as a challenge to Mughal-e-Azam, another film with the same story came out, Anarkali, which was also a big hit, particularly with its songs. But now the question, what effectively will happen is that the Anarkali film would be seen as the original and Mughal-e-Azam might be seen as the adaptation. But the fact remains that Mughal-e-Azam was conceived of first and Anarkali later. But equally important is the fact that Mughal-e-Azam itself is based on an Urdu play. And the Urdu play is based on the folk tale or the common legend of Salim and Anarkali. So this question of chronology and original and copyright, original and adaptation again becomes very dicey, as like I already mentioned, does the issue of copyright. But then again, when we're looking at similarities and differences, this is something we need to recognize that similarities and differences may be based on social particulars, cultural differences, political differences, and also cinematic realities. So when we look at all of these, it will be possible for us to look base a little bit on, especially the first two categories here that Constantine Verevis identifies, and that is to look at adaptation as an industrial category, which we will be looking at, and as a textual strategy. As a critical category, here we will not be looking at it too much, but it is something that we could go back to over and over again. Again, the first question then arises for us. How do we know what the source is? Now, again, here something very interesting happens, and this is something that Lucia Kramer, who is again like Thomas Leach, a leading scholar in adaptation studies, points out that in Hollywood films, sources are usually acknowledged, particularly and probably because of copyright laws. So when we see the credits of Dial M for Murder, we see Knott's name, Frederick Knott's name there. When we see the credits for Strangers on a Train, we see Patricia Highsmith's name there. But this is not what happens in India. In Indian films, the sources are rarely, if ever, acknowledged. And this is where remakes as an industrial category come in, because Lucia Kramer points out that in India, especially recently, I mean, at least in the last 50 to 60 years, there has been the general feeling that literature is highbrow and cinema is more the entertainment of the masses. So if a film is going to openly acknowledge a literary text as its source, it might alienate the local audience. So probably this is one reason. This also puts a lot of doubt on what we are talking about, because how do you know that a particular film is based on an earlier film? And so this will depend to a very large extent on our viewing history and our reading history. So if you haven't watched Strangers on a Train, Muran may not appear to be a remake at all because it changes a lot from the source. The issue of copyright is also something that we look at here. These are aspects that Lucia Kramer identifies, the strategies. And we'll notice that this, she's talking particularly about Hindi cinema, but we can look at this especially in terms of Tamil cinema as well. Excuse me. So, if you notice, two or three of two at least, the addition of emotions and sensations and emphasis on interpersonal relationships and familial conflicts have to do with the fact that Indian cinema, as is generally considered, is very melodramatic. Our cinema has is historically linked to theater. Many of our earliest actors were theater artists, and the melodrama that was expected of theater is something that is carried on into films. The other important aspect is that Indian ethos, Indian ethics, Tamil ethos and Tamil ethics have definitely got to be incorporated. And we will see that very specifically in certain aspects in Savi. Couple of other things. One is the ubiquitous song and dance sequences in Indian cinema. There is, of course, a historicity to this. There is a reason why this is there. But song and dance sequences exteriorize emotions, and they also heighten suspension of disbelief. In a number of thrillers in Hindi, the song and dance sequences play a role in the plot. The song often was a means by which information was given to a character, or it helped in the denouement. The song became a part of the denouement. Not so much in Tamil cinema, but we will see how Savi, we will mention the song and dance in Savi. The other is expansion. Now, this is something that is perhaps a given, especially given the fact that Indian cinema, the average Indian film is at least an hour, a full 60 minutes longer than the average Hollywood film. So how do you fill in those 60 minutes? A lot of these 60 minutes are filled in using, family drama and song and dance sequences. Especially in Tamil, I think something that is that I think is there across India, but very well done and well charted in Tamil are the comic subplots. Of course, of late we no longer have this, but 50s and 60s cinema, I'm sure we all recall the parallel plot with Nagesh and Manorama and N.S. Krishnan and T.M. Madhuram and all of them, that parallel track that went on, and that parallel track was entirely a parallel track. Sometimes it did not even connect to the main track. And we saw it. We saw it and we enjoyed it. And to be honest, I think Tamil cinema has a fantastic tradition of comedy. Comedy and mythology, something that I think sets Tamil cinema apart. We've got a fabulous tradition of comedy, which we will look at again when we come to Savi. So, given all this, these, like I said, these are the two films, and this is the basic information about the film. You'll notice that Savi, which was drawn from Etbar, which owes a lot to Etbar and to the Island for Murder. Savi and Etbar were released in the same year. Etbar was released in March and Savi was released in September. There's close to 30 years of difference between the English film and the Tamil films. The actors are in the order of their roles. So Satyaraj plays the role that Raj Babbar played, which Ray Williams played. Strangers on a Train, 60 years difference between the two. And we will see how completely different Muran is from Strangers on a Train. So which very brief foray into Hitchcock. Hitchcock is, of course, known as the master of suspense cinema, not of detective cinema. Hitchcock did not like detective stories because he felt that there was no emotion in detective stories. It was entirely cerebral. The picture of the woman screaming that you see over there is from his iconic film Psycho. But just as much as he was known as the master of suspense cinema, he was also He also showed romance very beautifully in his films, and a lot of Hitchcock scholars focus on both. Hitchcock is also seen as an auteur, a director who imprints their unique way of using camera and lighting in their films. Auteur studies draw upon Hitchcock films to a large extent. And Hitchcock is also known for the cameo roles that he performed. The two on top over there, the left to your left, the two top left, the one on top and the one below that have their shots from Hitchcock's cameo roles. So that's one of the fun parts of watching a Hitchcock film. You keep trying to figure out where Hitchcock is walking across the screen. He never says a single word. So we are looking at a genre called thrillers. So what exactly do we mean by a thriller? And this is where genre studies comes in. And as students of literature, we would go back to maybe Todorov's essay on typology of detective fiction, where he does talk to a large to some, he talks quite a bit about the thriller as an offshoot of the classic whodunit. We might also want to go back to S.S. Van Dyne's model. Both Todorov and Van Dyne are structuralists. A criminal. One is the victim, who is the victim of the crime, and the other one is the investigator or the avenger, who actually tries to figure out what happened or get the criminals to justice. Now, Tamil cinema itself does have a tradition of thrillers. Of late, we've had a lot of thrillers, especially 2000 onwards, a lot of thrillers, many of them psychological thrillers. I've put Andanal over there, which was it was a film directed by S. Balachandar, a film that was, I think at that time, it was even seen as a film that was way ahead of its time. It had no songs, no dances, and drew very heavily upon Rashomon, which I had mentioned earlier. The Rashomon effect is it's drawn from that film, which it's an effect that has this question of what is reality, because a single incident is interpreted in different ways by different characters. It's not so much a question of different people narrating different stories that give the same character different version, different approaches, but the same incident is interpreted differently by different people. In literature, of course, we've been used to it a lot. In cinema and in psychology, it is called the Rashomon effect. S. Balachandar also was responsible for a number of other thrillers, got a couple of them over there. And Balachandar's use of camera and lighting draw somewhat from Hitchcock, but they're also very, very effective and very, very, very innovative. And of course, we have Jayashankar, who was known for a long time as Tennagatha James Bond. And I'm mentioning him specifically because he's related to our film. He comes as CID, he comes as Inspector Shankar in Savi. The two films where he came earlier were CID Shankar and Vallavan Muruvan. Now, given that, if we look at Dial M for Murder, Savi and Athbar, now these are the basic motives. And here I am, of course, following a structuralist method. So you have a philandering husband, and the names I've used the names of the actors, and in the same order, as in there is the Tamil film, the Hindi, and the Hollywood film. So you have the philandering husband, an amateur tennis player who stopped playing, who wants to murder his rich socialite wife because one, he wants some money, and two, he becomes aware that she's involved with this other man who is kind of suggesting that she get a divorce from him. So he finds this hired murderer and makes a very clear and definite plan on how to murder his wife. Unfortunately, the wife murders the hired man. So now the husband has to do something to save himself as well. So what he does is that he works the evidence around to make it appear as if the wife killed the other guy. So actually, if you look at what happens, we will see that the Hindi film and the Tamil film have a lot of similarities in a number of scenes. So I've just selected 2 scenes where we can actually see the similarities. While I hope the video will play. This is the opening scene in which the heroine and the other man are introduced. I'll play the Tamil one first. Could you tell me if you can hear and see the video? Is the video?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And this is the Hindi version.
ये लो टिकट हम आने की कोशिश करेंगे अगर ना आ पाए तो सागर से कहना कि हम आपको
लेकिन तुम आना जरूर Thank you. So I think you would have noticed the similarities in the settings. You would have noticed the similarities in the way in which the maison scene is created with the rain and the crowd, and also the fact that in both the Tamil and the Hindi film, the other man is made into a singer. Now this makes it very easy for the films to actually include a lot of songs, as both of them do. And in both the films, the heroine is somebody who used to sing, who had been trained in singing. So that is one you could see the similarities in. This is another scene from the middle of the film, about half an hour into the film, and if you look at the timing in both the videos, you'll notice that they come almost close to each other. This is at when the heroine has received a blackmail note. She doesn't know who it is from. It's actually from her husband, and the audience knows it's from her husband, because a letter that the other man had written to her was in her bag, and the bag had got stolen at a party. Right? So this is the Tamil version. Do notice how the camera moves along with the lift, and you have the high angle and the low angle shots, because they would be more or less reflected in film as well. My screen has blanked out.
1 second, ma'am. 1 second. Is it visible now, ma'am?
Yeah, it's just coming back. Just give me a second. Is it visible for you? Something is coming?
Yes, ma'am.
Just give me a minute. It has to start again.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Even my kid.
Also, it's live streaming, ma'am. Maybe because of signal.
Oh, okay.
Might be weak. Uh-huh.
Okay, and this is the Hindi version. You can see how the same kind of angles are used. Right. So we can see those are some of the similarities. There are quite a few differences between the two, and this is where I think the cultural and social ethos of the adaptation comes into play in a big way. And one of these is the affair between the heroine and the other man. I've called him the other man and not ex-lover for a specific reason, because in Dial M for Murder, in the English film, there was definitely an affair in the past. And in the present of the film, the affair is rekindled. The first scene has the two of them kissing, showing clearly that the affair has been rekindled. And in Etbar, the affair has been in the past, but it is over before the movie begins, and it is over because Suresh Oberoi had wanted to focus on his singing career and not get caught up with the family life. But in Savi, the Tamil film, there is no affair at all. In the sense that Niralgal Ravi clearly says that he had romantic inclinations towards Sarita, but Sarita had made it very clear in the past that she was not interested in him at all, and she thought of him only as a friend. Now, this is interesting part, especially because Tamil cinema has a history of not allowing its heroines to have extramarital or premarital affairs. And if at all there has been an affair, she's not really allowed to move on to another man. Whereas, of course, now things are different. I mean, the ethos is very different. But this difference is something that you find in some other ways as well. And if we look at one of the strategies that Lucia Kremer had identified, it was expansion. So one of the ways in which expansion works is this many incidents or much of the information which in Dial M for Murder is given in as dialogue. So we only hear the heroine and the other characters talk. That information is actually shown as a full-blown incident in Etbar. But there are some bits of information that are given in Etbar, only narrated to us or shown in a very short, in very short frames, very short scenes rather, sorry, not frames. And these get expanded further in Savi. So this kind of double expansion, we can see in a couple of places. I will just show you one or two. One is the way in which the letter is shown. Now, I'm sorry, I don't think you can hear the dialogue in the English film. You just have to take my word for it that she's telling him that the letter is, he had written a lot of letters to her and she had burnt all of them except for one, which letter she says got stolen. So you just, I'm sorry, the audio is not very clear in the English one. You'll just have to take my word for it. This is what happens in Tamil. So here the heroine and the other man meet in the present of the film when she actually wants to commit suicide because her husband has been ill-treating her, and they strike up their friendship again. And this is a letter that he sends. And this is what had happened in the Hindi. Something similar happens in the scene where the handbag is stolen. The letter was initially in the handbag, and the handbag gets stolen. So what happens is that in the English film, we are only told that the handbag is stolen. In the Hindi film, we are shown the heroine and her husband go to a party, and we are shown the handbag being stolen. We don't know much about who is arranging the party and all. But in the Tamil version, we have a situation for the hotel itself. So there is a very random sequence with Kalapetti Singaram and Gandhimati, which the parallel comedy track, where you actually see the people who are running the hotel where the handbag is stolen. Like in the earlier films in Tamil cinema, the two of them have really no other role to play later. This is good body. நம்ம ஓட்டவங்க ஆட்டுப்பால் தூக்கம் அவிச்ச முட்டையும் தின்னு விட்டு ட்ரிப் கொடுக்கறதுக்கு காசு இல்லைன்ட்டா. ஏதோ 10-12 ரூபாய்க்கு பில்லு போடுவீங்கன்னு நினைச்சேன். ஒரேடியா 120 ரூபாய்க்கு பில்லு போட்டீங்கன்னா நான் என்னங்க பண்ணுவேன்? பின்ன எவ்வளவு வேணும் ஆகும்? இது ஸ்டார் ஹோட்டல். இங்கே ஆட்டுக்கால் சூப்பு கேட்டா முழுசா ஒரு ஆட்டையே சூப்பு போடுவோம். ஆனா கால் மட்டும் தான் கொடுப்போம். இப்ப Now this is something very unique to Tamil cinema. The other one is the decision that the hero makes to kill his wife. So in the Hindi version, this is how you see it. Raj Babbar is in his house having a drink, and there is an interior monologue. In the Tamil, however, you have again a comic interlude where you have Satyaraj's conscience, strange conscience this is, that tells him to kill his wife. உள்ள வந்தாங்களே பிறந்த வீட்டுல நாய் நுழையிற மாதிரி நுழைஞ்சிட்டு என்னடா பெரிய கேள்வி. நேரம் வந்தத வராதமா மனசுல பிடிச்சி வைறீங்க. ஆமா ரொம்ப யோசனையா இருக்கிறீங்களா? ஏன் அவள சொன்ன ஆகறீங்க வேண்டாங்க நானே. So apart from these, we also have one more interesting similarity and difference between the two. And this is the inspectors in both the films. Now, in the Hindi film, we have Danny Dimbrokka, who comes as the inspector who finally solves the crime. In Tamil, like I already mentioned, that this is Jai Shankar, who comes here again as CID Shankar. Jai Shankar has a history of acting as detectives.
அந்த சம்பவம் நடந்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் அவனை காப்பாத்துறதுக்காக நீங்க டாக்டரை கூப்பிட முயற்சி பண்ணீங்களா?
இல்ல, அந்த ஆள் செத்து போயிருந்தானே.
அவன் செத்து போயிட்டான்னு நீங்க எப்படி முடிவெடுத்தீங்க? பல்ஸ் பாத்தீங்களா?
இல்ல.
பின்ன எப்படித்தான் முடிவு செஞ்சீங்க?
இருந்த அந்த பாடியை பார்த்ததும் செத்து போயிட்டாரு தெரிஞ்சது.
நீங்க இதுக்கு முன்னால அந்த சதீஷ பாத்திருக்கீங்களா?
இல்ல, நான் பார்த்ததே இல்ல.
மேடம்,
okay, that cough sounds a little artificial on Jai Shankar, personally I felt, but if you look at this slide, you will notice that Danny and Jai Shankar are, they have the same kind of specs. They look at the people they are talking to the same way. They look down and look through the top of their specs. And that cough is something that Danny uses also in the film. So this is the same interrogation scene in Hindi.
उसे देखकर कोई भी बता सकता था कि वो मर चुका था खून कितना है
इसका मतलब आपने उसका चेहरा देखा
मैंने सिर्फ उसकी आंखें देखी उसका चेहरा नहीं
नेहा आपको बता चुकी है कि उन्होंने उस आदमी को पहले कभी नहीं देखा हमारी समझ में नहीं आता कि आपने क्यों परेशान करने लगे
So this is one of the similarities and the differences in the films. Some of the things remain exactly the same. The murder plan is strikingly similar in all three films. The blackmails are the same. The plan involves the key and the carpet. There is a phone call that the husband says he will make from the stag party. And in all the three films, he says he will make the call at 11:55. And at 11:55, there is somebody else who stop. I mean, his clock stops, his watch stops, so he's not able to make the call. In all the three films, the heroine is sentenced to death. This actually may seem very odd in the Indian films, given that in the 1980s, although death sentence, capital punishment was there, it was only for very extremely dangerous people. So it did not really fit into the legal realism of the film. But nevertheless, it heightened the central motive, that was the motive of the innocent framed. The way in which the denouement comes by exchange of the keys is again something very similar between the two. So this central motive of the innocent who is framed and the innocent who is therefore on the run is something that is common in a number of thrillers and is very common in Hitchcock. For instance, even Dial-M from Strangers on a Train has this. I Confess is another film that has this. 99 Steps has this. And we can also see how Dial-M for Murder was remade in 1998 with a very different, more central motive. So it's no longer the innocent framed, but it is the innocent who's scared. So it's the entire focus has shifted to the psychological impact that the murder has on the heroine here. This shift is something you can see in the 1998 film A Perfect Murder. And this is the turn, the twist that you can see between Strangers on a Train and Muran. So Strangers on a Train has a very interesting premise. What you have is two strangers who meet and as they are talking, they find that each of them has somebody who who's a thorn in their sides. So in the Hitchcock's film, Fairley Granger is a tennis player, and Robert Walker is the son of a rich man. And Robert Walker, Fairley Granger wants to divorce his wife. Robert Walker has a father who will not give him any money. So he proposes to Fairley Granger that he will kill his wife and that Fairley Granger will then kill his father. So clearly, Fairley Granger thinks that Robert Walker is slightly off his rocker and therefore humors him and says, okay, only to find that his wife is murdered. And now the police think that he has murdered his wife. So the entire film is Fairley Granger trying to prove that no, he did not murder his wife. So the two strangers, the unfaithful wives in both, and by the time Muran has come, unfaithful wives are common in Tamil cinema. We have the girlfriend in both the films and the murder swap. But there is a little bit of a difference. So in Strangers on a Train, because it is an innocent framed pattern, you have the focus on suspense. But in Muran, the focus is the sense of fear. Because we have Cheran who gets afraid what's going to happen to Haripriya because Prasanna begins to target her. She falls down, and it's very obvious that he has cut through the ladder that she has to climb to do something in her orphanage. In Strangers on a Train, the wife's infidelity is clearly established. In fact, she is pregnant with another man's wife. In Muran, by now we have become somewhat maybe comfortable with the wife's infidelity, but it is only hinted at visually. We're not really shown it too much. Strangers focuses on proving the husband innocent, whereas in Muran, by the time the last half an hour at least, the focus is on getting rid of Prasanna. In Strangers, you have a cigarette case that can be dangerous to the hero, to Fairleigh Granger, because the other guy takes the cigarette case in the train and decides that he's going to leave it at the scene of the crime. Whereas in Muran, Prasanna gives Cheran a pistol with which to kill his father. And one of the most interesting things is that in Strangers on a Train, the focus is on the events that happen, whereas in Muran, the focus is on the characters. And this is what makes Muran more a psychological study than Strangers. Of course, in Muran, you have Prasanna. We are told that the story that Prasanna tells Cheran is completely wrong. And we have one example of a Rashomon effect where other people narrate the same story that Prasanna did, but with different interpretations. But what we have here is what can be called some differences in the locales and the mise en scène. In Strangers on a Train, the two meet on a train. This is not playing. I'm afraid, again, I guess you'll just have to take my word for it. The two of them meet on a train. Fairleigh Granger is a tennis star. This is how they meet in Muran.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt. There is no audio, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay, ma'am.
Yeah, I think this is the last clip where the audio is necessary. So maybe I'll just tell you what happens. Cheran is coming back. Cheran is a music composer and he's coming back from a hotel. And even though this is the first time the two of them actually meet this way, they have seen each other. At least Cheran has seen Prasanna. Prasanna had earlier threatened to jump off the balcony jump off a balcony in the hotel because he was drunk. So what you have there is the two of them meeting this way. One of the most iconic scenes is the one that I'm playing here. This is the actual murder. I know that the audio is not clear, but just see the visuals. This is one of the scenes that's usually used as an example for Hitchcock as auteur. This is the wife. So this is actually, there's actually very little audio over here. There's only the sound of the fair that you can hear, and that's also very light, very mild sound, soft sounds. But this is a very iconic scene, but this is not there at all in Muran. All we see is Cheran sitting in his house, having a cup of tea or something, and he here gets a phone call, and he just says, "What?" And the next thing we know is that we are told that his wife has met with an accident. It takes a while for us to figure out that Prasanna has actually run his wife off the road. So this is some kind of a reverse expansion. What took a long time in the Hitchcock film becomes shorter in the Tamil film. And this fact that it is shorter, the fact that some of them are not even shown, actually heightens the sense of that fear, the psychology, the fear psychology that you can see. This is the climax. This is the climax in Strangers on a Train. What you have there is the uh, the murderer has actually decided to go to the fair and place that incriminating cigarette case over there, and the hero is trying to stop him. This takes a good 6 to 7 minutes. That's all this climax in. That's all the climax in Muran. And in some way, the ending of Muran, where you have Prasanna falling off, it's the same hotel as in the beginning. Prasanna falls off the same balcony. And in many ways, this is it's some, in a very twisted way, it echoes Hitchcock, because one of the things that happens in Hitchcock films is that the ending echoes the beginnings, but with a small difference. So in Strangers on a Train, one of the first scenes we see is that the Fairley Granger, whose name is Guy Haynes, he is in the train, and somebody else, the other guy, comes and asks him, "Are you Guy Haynes, the famous tennis star?" And he says, "Yes." And that's how the whole problem begins. And in the end of Strangers on a Train, Guy Haynes is again on the train. Another random guy gets in and says, "Are you Guy Haynes, the famous tennis star?" And he looks at him and says, "No," and walks off. So this is something you can see even in Rear Window. You can see it in North by Northwest. Here you have something similar but slightly different. So this is just something that some of the things that possibilities in adaptation studies of Hitchcock and Tamil cinema. But Tamil cinema and especially in the 2000s, Tamil cinema focused a lot on psychological thrillers. We've had a whole lot of sci-fi thrillers and psychological thrillers which came up and were quite successful at the box office. So these are just some of the possibilities, and I'm sure even as we were talking, some other possibilities might have struck you. So I do encourage you to look at more such possibilities, particularly if you can connect it directly with the literary text. These are some of the sources that I had used. The entries are neither in MLA format nor are they in APA format. It is just the name of the writer and the works. Please feel free to look at all of them. They are all available online for free in Anna's archives or in Internet Archives. Internet Archives also has almost all of Hitchcock's films available if you're interested. So that's all from me. Thank you so much for listening. And sorry about that glitch about the audio somewhere in between. I don't know what happened.
It's okay, ma'am. Because it might be we are live streaming, and also you are streaming 3 videos at a time, no, ma'am, because of signal.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. It's okay, ma'am. No issues.
Thank you so much.
Swati?
Thank you, ma'am. Now the forum is open for question session.
Just a minute. I'm not able to get my. Can you see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because I can only see a blank square on my screen. That's it.
Is there any problem, ma'am?
No, that's okay. I mean, if you can see me, I'm fine. I mean, I can't see it. I can just see a blank square. That's fine.
Participants, do you have any questions? You can ask her.
Can you please share the PPT? Yes, I will do that. Shall I send it to Selvam, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll send it without the videos because the video clippings will take a very long. I mean, it will make the PPT bulky.
Ma'am, actually, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
While you were screening that video, Savi,
Yeah.
I can relate that same movie with Maunam Samadam Mammootty and
Yes.
Amala.
Yes, exactly.
Is anywhere it is related, ma'am?
I don't think it's overtly related, but yes, I could also see. I mean, I could also recognize the echoes, but I'm not sure if it was directly related.
Okay, ma'am.
I'm sure there are a lot of films that we can actually study. Tamil cinema hasn't been studied much except in terms of its cultural, in terms of its, only some of them have been studied in terms of the cultural context. And it offers a very wide scope for study and research.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Let us be grateful to the people who make us happy. They are the charming gardeners who make our soul blossom. Now, I would like to call upon Ms. B. Abhinaya, ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to render a vote of prayer.
Good morning, all. It's my great pleasure to render a vote of thanks on this great occasion. I thank our management, principal, for a session like this. I thank our HOD, vice principal, and all our endeavors.
Abhinaya ma'am, I think your connection is
Our
from
resource person, Dr. Padma V. Mekket, drawing
Abhi, your
in our
voice is
minds
breaking.
in merging techniques of cinema with literature. Hello, sir? Is it audible, sir? I have a good connection, ma'am. I think. Is it audible, ma'am?
Yeah, please go ahead, ma'am.
Hello? Sir? Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So I thank Padma ma'am for drawing new perspective in our minds in merging techniques of cinema with literature for demanding research area. I thank the organizing committee for their effort in making the program a grand success. I thank our beloved students for their active participation. I thank the technical team for their great support. Last but not least, I thank all our participants for their active participation. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Padma ma'am, my sincere gratitude to you, ma'am, and thanks a lot for accepting my invitation. And it was a wonderful presentation, and thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you also so much.
Small capital letter A, small letter A.
Ma'am, please log on, ma'am. Log off, ma'am.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you please close the session, I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
அதெல்லாம் இல்ல கன்ஃபியூஸ் பண்ணி எழுதிருக்காங்க எல்லோட ஸ்மால் லெட்டர் எது கரெக்டா கண்டுபிடி கேபிட்டல் எல் எங்க இருக்கு இங்க பாரு கேபிட்டல் எல் ஸ்மால் எல் எப்படி இருக்கு
Record